Hello, and welcome to another episode of English Composition with me, your host, Jeff Sanger, and my good friend, Steve. Today, we're going to be talking to you about analytical writing, right? You know from past materials that the purpose of the writing, right, the thing you're trying to achieve, and the audience for the writing, in other words, the person for whom the writing is designed, that drives what the writing looks like. Right? So, for example, if you're going to send an email to your supervisor, that's going to be formatted and use very different words than if you were just going to leave a short note for your parent or significant other or someone that you live with that you're close to. Why? Because the purpose and audience is different. Right? And so I have to get you thinking about how different types of academic assignments call for different types of writing. Some assignments require persuasive writing, right? I'm sure that you did some of those in English 101. But if you look at the instructions for the rhetorical analysis paper, as I know that you have, you will see that it requires analytical writing, not persuasive writing. Let's talk a little bit more about that. I'm going to give you some examples to distinguish between the different types of writing, and then we're going to look at some student examples of highly successful analytical writing so you can get an idea of what that looks like. Okay, here are three different statements here, and each of them suggests, the way it's phrased, suggests one of these types of writing is coming, right? So what I'd like you to do is pause the video and figure out and try to match these, right? So which of these is an analytical statement, which is an informational statement, and which is a persuasive statement. Remember, analytical writing explains how things work. Informational writing just gives facts, and persuasive writing tries to convince someone of something. So pause the video and see if you can match them up. All right, let's see what you came up with. Let's start at the bottom here. Where does this go? Right there, right? Why is this a persuasive statement? Because it makes a claim, right? It is not factual that the Ford Mustang is the best car. Not at all. We could debate that all day. It is this person's opinion, right? And they put the because there, and so you can imagine there's some reasons that are going to follow. Why? Because they want to persuade the audience on the other end to agree with them. It's an interesting writing style, but it is not called for in the rhetorical analysis paper, right? What about this one? Informational writing. That goes here, right? It's just giving us facts, telling us about the Ford Mustang. When you think about your rhetorical analysis paper, in that first paragraph, you're going to be doing some informational writing. You have to tell the reader about what happened in Flint so they understand why the person made the cartoon and what are some of the events that the cartoon is referring to. The whole rest of the paper, after the first paragraph, is analytical writing. That's where you explain how the argument in the cartoon works. All right, so you have to get all your explanation about Flint out in the first paragraph because the whole rest of the paper is analytical writing about the cartoon. How does it create its argument via the different textual elements, right? It's just like explaining how an engine works. We could point at the pistons, the drive shaft, the cams, the oil rings, and explain how all that stuff works together. It's analytical writing. It's the same ballpark as going in here and explaining the different what the different textual elements mean and what they do. What's their purpose, right? And you had some practice with this on the discussion board. Some folks talked about the pinky as their chosen textual element. Because remember, a textual element is not just the things that are in writing. It's any part of the cartoon. That glass of dirty water is a textual element. So are the stacks of what appear to be pennies. Right? And so you remember from the assignment directions, you need to write about a number of different textual elements to explain what they mean, how they work, what their purpose is to help the reader understand how the main argument of the cartoon comes together. Right? And to do that requires analytical writing. It doesn't matter if you agree with the argument that the cartoonist appears to be making here about Snyder, or in the other cartoon where he's in the boat. What matters is if you can explain how that argument is created in the image. Let's look at one student's efforts to do that, shall we? I believe that you already read through this on the last page. So this is from one of the sample papers that I have from past students who did a great job on this assignment. It's not a perfect paper, but it did receive an A, and so you can imagine there's some effective analytical writing in that paper. So this is one of the body paragraphs. The body paragraphs are the paragraphs in the middle, right, where you're supposed to be doing all that great analytical writing. So you've already read it, hopefully. If not, just click back so that you can look at it easily without trying to read it during the video. And then we're going to see where is she doing these things, right? Because the reason that the paper scored well is because the student did all the things the directions asked for, right? So if you haven't already, go ahead and see if you can find these things in the paragraph, because if you understand the concepts, it's more likely that you'll be able to demonstrate them in your own writing. Okay, I made this a little smaller just so you can see the whole thing. Let's go in order. Where does the student identify the textual element? Well, it's right here. It's in the first paragraph, or the first sentence of the paragraph, pardon me. Why would she do that? Well, this is a good example of what we call a topic sentence, right? In lots of different writing styles, you have a topic sentence that gives the reader a sneak preview about what the rest of the paragraph is going to be about. And so she points to the textual element she's interested in right here in the first sentence. She's basically just signals to you this whole paragraph is going to be about how the title works with that dividing line down the middle. So that's what she's going to focus on in this paragraph, right? There's other things that she's probably interested in as well that she explores in subsequent paragraphs. But for now, that's the textual element that she is focused on. And I would encourage you to use topic sentences like this to make sure that helps your reader know what the paragraph's going to be about, and it helps you stay focused in your writing. All right, what's the next one? Identify where the student explains what the textual element means. This is different than explaining why the artist designed it that way. These are two different things. This is meaning. Oops, sorry about that. This is purpose. Okay, so this is like if we're talking about, I don't know, a great Bob Marley song, I Shot the Sheriff. We can talk about what the lyrics mean, and we can also talk about what Bob was trying to get at with that song, why he potentially designed it that way. Okay, you can do analysis with lots of things besides just political cartoons. Anyhow, where does she explain what the textual element means? All through here. All those sentences are designed to explain the meaning of that textual element, right? And it's complicated, right? Because you've got a couple different textual elements that sort of interact here, right? Because the whole title, pinching, unites these two things, it joins these two things that are happening on either side of the line there. The line could almost be seen as a cause and effect kind of thing. Some students write about that. But anyway, the idea is that she has to kind of explain what the artist is doing there. She has to explain the meaning of that. So she explains why she's pinching her cheeks and what pinching pennies means, and then connects that to the title. But that's not all of the work. Some students kind of stop there, right? Because it's fun to explain meaning. But if we're going to do a rhetorical analysis, we have to talk about the purpose. Why did Zygus design it that way, right? This is where she talks about purpose. Why did the artist want to do this? Right? Because he wanted to show how his focus on saving money, what that led to, what the consequences were. Right? She also talks about, how this is designed to make the reader feel angry. right? And then when you hear that word, then you think, that's an emotional appeal. That's an appeal to pathos. And indeed, oftentimes when you start writing about purpose, this is when you're going to identify where the rhetorical appeals are invoked, right? And so here, this is about a logos-based appeal that she came across, right? So yes, what happened in Flint was very much about the government trying to save money. It wasn't pennies, of course, right? That's figurative in the cartoon, but it was about trying to save money. So that's an appeal to logos. Snyder's name on the cufflink so that we know who the cartoon is referring to, that's an appeal to logos, right? The purpose of that is to prevent confusion on the part of the reader, right? But then she also has to talk about the kind of how the cartoon shows these dramatically different sides of the situation. And when you see what the people on the right-hand panel are going through, it makes you angry, right? And so, of course, that's an appeal to pathos. And in the next paragraph, I believe she goes into a little bit more in depth on the right side of the panel and gets into some of the textual elements on that side. Now, remember, there are no right and wrong answers when it comes to interpreting the cartoon. The question is, are you able to explain adequately why you believe it means what you think it does, right? You have to explain yourself on the page. You can't just tell me what it means, right? You have to provide some explanation for why you think it means that. That helps us understand the author's purpose. That's one of the things that makes this a fun assignment, is you could have 10 students that are writing about the same cartoon, and they're going to be interested in different textual elements, and they're going to come away with sometimes some different understandings of what those textual elements might mean. What's interesting is that a lot of times it circles back to the same purpose on the part of the artist. So the sample papers are a model, right, to sort of inspire you. You should not feel like, oh, that means I need to write about those same textual elements and it has to be structured the same way, right? I don't want you to do that. I want you to look at these just to get an idea of what analytical writing looks like. One more quick point. The word I is never used here, right? This is analytical writing for an academic audience. Academic audiences do not expect to see you personally in the writing. It's too informal, right? So you're not going to want to have any I statements in here. So this is another important quality of this type of writing that this example demonstrates nicely. I hope you have found this video helpful, because yes, I want you to, as a lot of the other materials this week have to do with editing. And yes, I want you to have lots of time to edit to make sure all the sentences are grammatically correct, that you have put the correct punctuation where it belongs. I have lots of tools to help you do that in this week's materials, but we also have to make sure that you've got analytical writing in there, right? Because if you write the thing as like a 5-paragraph persuasive essay trying to convince me that Snyder's a jerk and Flint never should have happened, it's going to fail no matter how grammatically perfect it is, because you're not doing analytical writing in that kind of paper, right? And so hopefully this has helped demonstrate the type of writing that I'm looking for. Hopefully the peer review has been helpful as well. Reach out to me if you have any questions. You can message me in Canvas, or you can stop by my virtual office hours, which I have not added to this page yet, but I bet if I go to the current homepage, there they are. They'll always be there. It'll generally be that same link all semester. Sometimes when I need to make a change, I might, put something at the bottom there if I'm not available at that time, but I'm usually always there. That's all I've got. Have a good one, and I'll talk to you soon.